This is, again, the fantastic things that the grassroots can do. You can help build a range. You can help a 4-H shooting sports program. You can help defend the Second Amendment against really atrocious gun control proposals like our next guest did there in Longmeadow, Massachusetts. I want to welcome to the show Henry Lanouette with Longmeadow Citizens for Liberty. Henry, thank you, sir, for your time today.
Good afternoon, Cam. Glad to be here.
It is great having you on the show. Congratulations on the victory there in Longmeadow, Massachusetts.
Thank you so much. We're very happy, although we're ever vigilant because our opponents may have had their eye blackened, but I think they'll be coming back with more fear-mongering and dividing our peaceful little New England community.
So where in Massachusetts is Longmeadow, Henry?
Longmeadow is in the western part of Massachusetts, far away from the traffic nightmare of Boston, but still close enough to be fans of the Red Sox and the Patriots and the Bruins. I better not forget anybody.
That sounds like the best part of the state there. All right, and so were you surprised when you heard that these anti-gun proposals were coming up again? A gun ban on semi-automatic rifles, $300 a day fine, a ban on lawful carrying of firearms on public property, which would include sidewalks, gun registration of every firearm owned by every resident there in Longmeadow. Is this something that sounds like your town would do?
No, it's so unlike our town, and when it happened, it started hitting newspapers, and there were little blips that were coming up, and I was sort of in a fog as a gun owner. I wasn't an activist. I had never been activated before, and all of a sudden, my friends were asking me what was going on. So I thought I better look into this and do something. So I got in touch with the Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts and asked if there was anything I could do and could they give me any guidance. And first they asked, "Are you a member?" And I said, "Well, actually, right this second, I'm joining the Gun Owners Action League." And they put me in touch with Walt Lehman, who's a life member, and Walt lives in town. And I met with Walt, and we started this little group called longforliberty.org.
Longforliberty.org, and you can go. The website is it's up and it's running right now. And so that was the start. But how did you go from, okay, I've got two people in a room, we both are really opposed to these gun control ordinances. We've got an idea for an organization, we've got an idea for a website. How did you go from that to an actual movement?
Well, Cam, there was Walt and I, and Walt's an older grandfatherly guy, and he said, "Do you know anything about computers? Do you know anything about email?" I said, "Yeah, do you know anything about guns?" And so we kind of got together and we got a meeting room and fronted the cash for this town meeting room and hoped that someone would come. And I brought a coffee pot and cookies, and Walt and I were there at 6 o'clock, and the meeting started at 7. And then people started to come, and they started slowly. And by the time our first meeting came, we didn't have room in that room. We had probably enough seats for 50 people, and there were people standing in the back of the room. Walt looked at me and said, "Henry, this is bigger than either of us."
Boy, I wish I could have been there in that room at that moment, Henry. That just must have given you chills.
We realized that, and we realized that we had so many people that were concerned. We had no idea, as concerned as we are, but we had no idea that this would wake up in town. And in our room, we're a bedroom community of Springfield. So in our room, we had surgeons, attorneys, retired police officers, grandmothers. We even have a lady who's proud to describe herself as a liberal non-gun owner who said, "No one can come and take my rights from me because they feel like it." And that's how this group got started.
God bless each and every one of them. And so from there, this was what happened here, because you had to have an education campaign. You had to let people know. Were you trying to? And how much of this was getting people to know what's on the ballot and then getting people to show up at that town meeting? Because you could have a room full of people who say, "This is awful, Henry," but if they don't show up in the right room at the right time, then none of their opposition really matters.
Well, I guess because there's so many business people that were in our room, we immediately broke into committees.
Okay.
So we developed a public relations committee, and they met separately the very next day, and they talked about how to soften our approach and how to target our approach and how to combat this argument, because we didn't want to just attack this little New England town with our Second Amendment constitutional rights.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a problem. This is a solution looking for a problem. We haven't done anything. We haven't had a problem. We're crime-free. Why are they coming after the law-abiding gun owners? Then we had a finance committee that started looking at how we would raise funds, and basically we all opened up our wallets, and people gave $5, $10, $50, $100, and we all just started kicking in cash, our own personal cash.
Wait. I gotta interrupt you right there, Henry, because at what point did the NRA airdrop bags full of cash for you?
The NRA, other than us being members as responsible gun owners, had nothing to do with us. They weren't aware of us. In fact, most people, when we would write to organizations, said, you guys really need to take care of this in your community. But the NRA had nothing to do with this. And some liberal poli-science professor at the Connecticut State University said, this is a stealth campaign funded by the NRA, which was immediately picked up by National Public Radio, who said the NRA is stomping on this little town, and that little New England town has to decide for themselves. It was us kicking in cash, and each meeting people, dug in their pockets and put green cash down.
The reason why I ask that, Henry, is because I knew that was the case, but look, this is how the stories get manufactured. You're not allowed, Henry. This could have been portrayed as an incredible story of citizen activism. We talk about apathy among voters and apathy among Americans. NPR could have done an incredible story of the town that got together and said no to gun control, but they were never going to do that story, Henry. You're not allowed to be a grassroots activist. You're not allowed to have an idea and say this isn't right and to start something in your town that fights back. You're not allowed. It has to be that you're directed from Wayne LaPierre. You've got to be a puppet of Chris Cox or something like that.
And we had everything was stacked against us. The proponent of this warrant. Oh, by the way, in our nice community, it's frowned upon to talk about the person who fomented this division within the town because he's just a citizen, and we should just debate the warrant, as a citizen's petition. But this guy is a federal prosecutor in Springfield who stepped out of his role as a selectman and at the 11th hour put this warrant in for our town meeting. And what we do in these New England towns is we all get together and go to a big room in the high school and talk under control of a moderator who the lady was amazingly, she really did an amazing job, and they knew that they were going to have two heated sides. So we get together, but this federal prosecutor wanted to have a Lincoln Douglas style debate with us. Well, what does he do for a living? He prosecutes for a living. He stands and debates crimes, and we really didn't want to enter a debate where we would get led down a path of not supporting responsible gun ownership. We just wanted to not have our rights impinged upon.
Absolutely. So, did you feel confident? In fact, actually, before I ask you that question, so Election Day rolls around. You're mobilized. You're out there on the street corners, encouraging people to vote. You're getting a lot of honks and a lot of cheers, but you're also getting people shouting things like, "You bleeping Americans can shove your bleeping guns up your bleep." Apparently,
I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't know how to do it. I was stunned when it happened, and it's a British guy I don't know where he lives, but he lives fairly close to me because I saw him 2 mornings, and he rolled down the window, and I thought he was going to ask what the bill was about or why I was standing there, and he rolled down the window and screamed at me one day, and he drove away with his British accent. And let me take a side note. We have a very active member on our team who is a British expat, who's a marvelous a marvelous citizen. And so he really wanted me to make sure it was a Brit and not an Australian. And I said, listen, we're talking Hugh Grant. We're not talking Nicole Kidman. I know my accents. And this guy came again just 2 days before our vote, rolled down the window while my wife was standing there with a Vietnam veteran standing next to me, and he screamed those words, "You bleeping Americans can shove your bleeping guns up your bleep." And I laughed. I was unaware of what to do. And that's what we were facing with. I wasn't ready for it. And it was 3 or 4 of us standing there waving at people. So we weren't sure. We really, at exit polls, if we just went by the beeps, we felt pretty secure. But we were smart enough to know it's not having the people with lip service. Mm-hmm. They got to come to the meeting. They got to get out. They got to bring a friend. They got to get a neighbor.
So
we went.
Yeah, I was going to say. So the meeting is held. And it looks like they did come out and they did bring their neighbors and they did bring their family members because all of these bills went down to defeat, Henry. And I have not heard the actual vote total, but I've heard it was sizable. It was a sizable defeat.
When the vote came, and the discussion was rancorous because they allowed this guy to completely restate the warrant. This warrant had been out in advance. It was a printed copy by the town, went to every citizen, so we knew what the warrant was. And he had said no guns on town property, which including roads and sidewalks. He didn't have exclusions for police or FBI or military, but because we unveiled our cards, he rewrote it on the fly in front of the meeting. I tried to approach the microphone and ask if it was out of order, and I was sternly told to get in my place until I was recognized. So we had our piece, we spoke our piece, and when they took the vote, and the vote was to who was in favor of his vote, we saw yellow cards go up, and people were holding their cards, and they were all around the room, and I felt a little trepidatious. I felt a little nervous. And then they said all of those against. When the cards went up, it was like there wasn't a gap in between them. It was at least a 3-1 margin that we resoundingly defeated it. And then we went after the gun registration and told them, forget what you think is going to happen with gun registration. They're also going to let you know, once freedom of information requests get made, who has guns and who doesn't have guns. So those of you who don't have guns, put a sign out in front of your house. This home is proudly gun-free. Additionally, we're letting people know where the valuables are. How about those of you with art and jewelry? Can we register your art and jewelry so they know where it is? There are classical historical firearms that are worth quite a bit of money that were they registered in public knowledge, it would be at risk. So that was voted down. And then finally, the prosecutor puts a picture of a machine gun up on the wall, a fully automatic military-grade weapon. And he says, do we want this in our nurseries? Do we want this in our schools? By the way, it's already illegal in our schools. He's talking about the pre-ban guns from before 1994, modern sporting rifles. And he implied that. And people tried to talk it back, but now he got some of the moms nervous, and there were ladies up there that were almost in tears that they didn't want their children exposed to that type of thing. And I was so proud of the young lady who stood up as a mother and said, I don't want my children in a gun-free zone. I want my children to have the right to be defended. If something happens in that school, that I know that my children will be safe.
Wow.
And I was so proud. I was so proud.
And then when the cards went up, that too had gone down to defeat.
Every one of them went down to defeat. And this poli-sci professor, by the way, because we had the American flag with us on the side of the road, referred to us in his blog as jingoistic patriots. Now, I'm a fairly well-read person, but I had to look that up because I wasn't exactly sure what he was calling me. But he called us jingoistic patriots. And so that's what I am. I'm a jingpad, I guess, or just a patriot. But I'm a proud jingpad, I guess.
Henry, you got to stay active, buddy, because we got to have you back on the show again. It has been awesome talking to you, and I want to ask you. You say you are remaining vigilant. The selectman is still there. He said after the vote, quote, What I heard from the other side was nothing constructive, no alternative proposal about reducing gun violence. Some people suggested gun violence was the problem of our neighboring towns, but not Longmeadow. This not my problem approach is short-sighted. I hope we find the political will to pass these laws before a needless tragedy strikes. So he's not going away. It sounds like are the Minutemen and women of Longmeadow remaining vigilant? Are you remaining prepared? And are you guys going to stay politically active?
I'm so glad that you asked. We weren't a group. We weren't an association prior to that. But I'm so proud to know these people that I've been associated with. I've met some people that I'm just moved. I feel so much better about my neighbors, and we're just, as you spoke, we just put together our next committee meeting, and we're going to decide what our next steps are, how we're going to keep the group. We're looking at doing education in our community, gun safety, working with folks to develop other alternatives. So when he does come forward again and cry and bring his boilerplate thing from the federal government, wherever this is coming from, it seems like a boilerplate set of laws that we still have our people, and maybe we can't convince the people who are already dead set, but if we can get our friends and then those that are in the middle who aren't really sure, maybe we're strong enough that we'll be able to defeat this again if it should come up.
Talking again with Henry Lanouette of the Longmeadow Citizens for Liberty group. All right, one final question for you, Henry. Was this... I obviously this was really important, but was this better, this experience of getting involved? I know it took a lot of time. Was it better than just sitting on the couch watching TV at night? Was it better than sitting and reading a book? I know you like to read. Is this worth it, getting involved, donating and devoting that time and attention? Would you encourage others to do this where they live too?
I think it's critical. I think that what happens is you have to realize that you have a voice. You may think you're one person. You can't impact it. You can't have anything to do, but you have no idea how many people support you. When I was standing holding my sign in the morning by myself at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I would have rather had still been having a cup of coffee, I don't want to say elderly, but this grandmotherly lady holding a book to her chest came walking across the wet grass. And she said, what is that sign about? Is that about the gun thing? And I thought, uh-oh, here we go. And I said, yeah, it is about the gun thing. She goes, well, good for you, because I just got my license to carry, and I don't want that taken away. So they're out there. You have friends. There are people that believe in us. They believe in this. Come out. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Don't put your head down because of what you were talking about before, Katie Couric and all the rest of them. It's a right.
Henry, listen, man, thank you for what you're doing, not just there in Longmeadow, Massachusetts, but I guarantee you have inspired and impacted people across the country. I am really, really proud to have you on the show, and I hope I get a chance to actually meet you in person one day and shake your hand.
I hope so, Cam.
Listen, thank you so much, sir, and we'll be talking again soon.
Okay, so long.
Henry Lanouette joined us from Longmeadow Citizens for Liberty. Golly. Don't you just, if you don't feel a little inspired right now, if you don't feel like going to your next city council meeting or just, getting up and doing something, go back and listen to this. Maybe turn up the volume a little bit more. I don't know. Something's wrong. Maybe there's some static or there's a glitch, maybe like that State Department video. But wow.